All right, today we're tackling something huge, public law. I want you to think of it as the master blueprint for an entire nation. It's the set of rules that builds, runs, and protects a country from the ground up.
So, have you ever really thought about this? I mean, we all have rules we have to follow, right? But what about the government? Who's making their rules? Who holds them accountable? Well, that's the big question, and the answer, really, is public law.
Okay, so let's get right into it. At its heart, public law is basically the government's own rule book. It lays out how all the different parts of the government are supposed to interact with each other. And crucially, it defines the relationship between the state and, well, you. It's what keeps power in check and makes sure it's not just a free-for-all.
So, let's start at the very beginning. Every good blueprint needs a solid foundation, and for a nation, that's its core rule book. So, public law really has two major parts, and they're like two sides of the same coin. You've got constitutional law. That's the high-level architectural drawing. It describes the big pieces, the legislature that makes the laws, the executive that carries them out, and the judiciary that interprets them. It's the supreme law of the land, period. But then you have administrative law. And if constitutional law is the blueprint, administrative law is the nitty-gritty instruction manual. It's for the day-to-day stuff, making sure all those government agencies are actually doing what they're supposed to by the book. So yeah, you can really think of administrative law as the system's internal watchdog. It's all about accountability. It's there to stop the abuse of power, to make sure public bodies are actually performing their duties, and, this is a big one for you and me, it gives us a way to fight back if we feel like a government agency has made an unfair decision. It gives us a remedy.
Okay, we've got the structure. Now what about the money? Every project needs a budget, and a country is no different. Let's talk about the people's money.
And this is where public finance law comes in. It's exactly what it sounds like, the laws that manage the country's wallet. It's the rulebook for how the government can collect money and, maybe even more importantly, how it gets to spend that money.
So, where does all this cash come from? Well, you can think of it like the income column on a giant spreadsheet. The big one, of course, is taxes. That's the lion's share. But governments have other revenue streams, too. They make profits from state-owned companies, like a national railway or something. They can sell off public property, like land. And yep, just like you or a big company, they can take out loans. And on the other side of the spreadsheet, where does it all go? Well, it goes right back into keeping the country running. We're talking about salaries for everyone from civil servants to soldiers. And then there's the massive, ongoing funding for all the things we kind of take for granted. Education, healthcare, police, and national defense. All that good stuff.
Now, this is absolutely crucial. There's one golden rule in public finance. The budget has to balance. The government can't just spend whatever it wants. The legislature, the people we elect to represent us, has to approve a budget where the money coming in matches the money going out. And once that budget is approved, it's not just a suggestion. It becomes law.
All right, so our blueprint has a solid structure and a budget. What's next? Well, you gotta have a security system, right? Let's talk crime and punishment. This quote gets to the heart of a really fundamental idea in law. You can't be punished for doing something if there wasn't a law against it at the time you did it. It's called the principle of legality. Basically, the government can't just decide one day that, hey, wearing a blue shirt is now illegal and arrest everyone who did it yesterday. The rules have to be clear and set in advance. So what actually makes something a crime in the eyes of the law? It's not always so straightforward. Usually, a prosecutor has to check off a list of 4 key elements. First, there has to be some kind of harm. Second, there's the actus reus, which is just a fancy Latin term for the actual criminal act. Third, you need mens rea, the guilty mind or intent. And finally, you have to prove causation, that the act is what actually led to the harm. Let's zoom in on that second one. Actus reus. It literally means guilty act. This is the physical part. And this is so important. You can't be arrested for just thinking about committing a crime. You have to actually take an action. Or, and this is interesting, sometimes it's about not taking an action when the law says you must.
And that's a perfect lead-in to this example. See, parents have a legal duty to provide for their kids. Food, clothes, a place to live. If they don't, if they neglect that duty, that failure to act is the actus reus. So the guilty act isn't always about doing something wrong. Sometimes it's about failing to do something right when you have a legal obligation to.
Okay, so not all crimes are the same, right? They're usually grouped together based on who or what gets hurt. First, you have crimes against persons. This is the stuff that's directed right at an individual. Things like murder, assault, kidnapping. Then you've got crimes against property. This is when someone's stuff is stolen or destroyed. We're talking arson, bribery, embezzlement. And finally, there are crimes against society. These are offenses where the victim is kind of everyone, the community as a whole. Think about things like drug trafficking. The idea is that these acts harm the general well-being of society.
Okay, we've built our blueprint from the inside out. We've got the structure, the money, the security, but no nation is an island, right? So for this last section, let's zoom out and see how our blueprint interacts with the rest of the world.
This brings us to public international law. You can think of it as the neighborhood rules for the whole planet. It's the body of law that says how countries are supposed to get along. It covers everything: trade deals, diplomatic relations, the rules of war, human rights. It's what makes a global community possible.
And the story of modern international law is, well, it's pretty intense. It was really born out of total disaster. After the absolute horror of World War I, countries came together to form the League of Nations, trying to make sure something like that never happened again. It didn't quite work. So after the even greater devastation of World War II, they tried again, creating the United Nations with a much stronger mandate to maintain peace.
Now, it's important to get this right. The UN is not a world government. It can't just pass a law for the whole planet. Instead, it's meant to be a place for countries to cooperate. Its whole purpose is to keep the peace, help nations be friendly with each other, and tackle the big problems that no single country can solve alone, things like global health crises or environmental protection. It's about getting everyone pulling in the same direction.
And there you have it. The blueprint is complete. As you can see, public law isn't just one narrow topic. It's this huge, interconnected system. It's the architectural plan, the daily instruction manual, the budget, and the security system for an entire nation. And on top of all that, it's the guide for how that nation behaves in the wider world.
So here's what I want you to think about. Now that you've seen the blueprint, can you see how it's shaping your life in ways you maybe never even noticed before? From the local park funded by public money to the international treaty that lets you travel with a passport, it's all part of this massive, invisible structure. It's everywhere.